Japan post-war really fell in love with this kind of American fashion of the time, and they took it and they wanted to make it their own, and they didn't just make it their own, they really perfected it. I think this story is really interesting, and I think it's a story worth telling, so let's get into it. After World War II, Japan was occupied by America as they were rebuilding cities, but also trying to rebuild a kind of identity for the country. They'd just been through this horrific war, and in come these American GIs wearing Levi's and bomber jackets and Ray-Bans. And you can just imagine the Japanese public would have seen these as not just clothes, but a kind of symbol of the outside world, or even a symbol of freedom. At this time in the 50s, Japan has seen films like Rebel Without a Cause. They have seen Elvis. They do have these kind of really classic Americana things, and they are kind of getting to witness this in the real world through the American military bringing them. Fan Jacket was really Japan's first Americana brand. It was started by an ex-World War II pilot who had become a tailor, and his name was Kensuke Ishizu, and he was just obsessed with this kind of Ivy League style that he had seen in magazines. He was reading Life, he was reading Esquire, and he wanted to kind of recreate this authentic American clothing, and ultimately did it much better. It's not so much that he was mimicking the American style, he was refining it. He was kind of introducing things like higher armholes, slimmer cuts, and a lot of more kind of meticulous stitching that American brands were overlooking at the time. In 1965, he put out a photo book called Take Ivy, and this thing just sparked this nationwide craze for the Ivy League style. You can see on screen that it's kind of this love letter to the East Coast college style, which does look cool, honestly. Like, it's never been my thing, but in seeing these photos, I can imagine to a Japan that's rebuilding, it would just be this kind of otherworldly kind of fashion that really symbolizes a better life. So all of a sudden, Take Ivy comes out, and then department stores in Japan have these things called Ivy corners where they're selling all this Ivy League clothes. And then you're seeing salarymen walking around in penny loafers and tweed blazers. As this style blew up, it became to be known as Ametora, which is a Japanese way of shortening the words American traditional. And it wasn't so much a fashion as like a symbol of Japan trying to rebuild itself and become this global superpower that they ultimately ended up becoming. An author named W. David Marks wrote a book called Ametora and wrote in there, quote, "Japanese youth didn't want to be American. They wanted to master America's cultural language on their own terms." And I think that really hits the nail on the head of what this situation was, in the way that it wasn't so much that the Japanese youth were seeing these Americans and just feeling like, oh, we want to be American, you know. I think it was a lot more like, after the war, we've lost our direction, but we haven't lost our culture. So let's take this kind of symbol of freedom and let's apply our culture to it, and let's make it our own. As Japan moved into the 70s, the Ivy League culture kind of fell out of fashion. I think it eventually got seen as being a bit too polished, a bit too corporate. And what came into fashion was kind of the American outlaw, or even the American working class. You know, cowboys, biker gangs, but also workwear, factory workers, a lot of denim, a lot of leather, but of course, just like the Ivy League style, they did that in their own way. The Bosozoku is Japan's kind of notorious outlaw biker gangs who started to emerge at this time. And to be honest, they're just cool as hell. I mean, probably not the greatest people, but visually they do look cool as hell. They would kind of get like denim jackets and slash them up and then paint these big kind of kanji characters on the back, or get it embroidered. A really cool reinterpretation of the American like Hells Angels look of the 70s. This kind of DIY fashion rebellion really caught the eye of two designers that I'm sure you all know, Kenzo Takara and Issey Miyake, who kind of got this style and reinterpreted it and elevated it into high fashion. They've gotten these American styles and they've deconstructed them, and they've applied a Japanese kind of lens to them, and they've moved them into high fashion, which just looks incredible. At the same time, in the 70s, you've got Studio D Artisan and Momotaro Jeans that are really trying to push things forward with the denim. They're getting these dead stock looms and they're reviving them, and they're hand dyeing the indigo, and they're making their own denim, and it's all very traditional and it's all super high quality. Like, if you get a chance just to touch, like feel the fabric of some of these jeans, it's just truly on another level. They've also seen the images of greases and stuff, and jeans that are faded and jeans that are ripped, and kind of reinterpreting that in their own way. But also, as well as distressing jeans, they're using sashiko stitching, which is traditionally used to mend farmers' workwear, and they're mending holes using that, which is really bringing it into this other world of high fashion or art. Or they're using boro patches, which is another traditional way of repairing workwear, and making a fabric out of that, which was super, super cool and still is today. They really took this kind of obsession to another level. Ibisu would hand paint the seagulls on every pair, and Warehouse would like recreate these Lee and Wrangler jeans from the 50s, but include the flaws, like include the stitching errors. And some of their jeans would take literal years to make, making them kind of this testament to patience that when people would buy them and wear them, they would feel like they're really wearing something special. By the time the 90s rolled around, Japanese Americana was a fully fledged subculture. There was dedicated magazines like Lightning and Free and Easy, who would just do these huge catalogs of every rivet and every stitch of every pair of vintage Levi's jeans. It was at this time that the denim craze started to reach overseas, although it's still niche, like not in the mainstream yet, but overseas denim heads would start to go to Japan just for denim. Hinoya was a store that was super popular and is still there, and you can go and visit if you're ever in Tokyo. But the feeling in the 90s was that Japanese Americana was about to go global, which it then did in the 2000s. So the 2000s really took it to another level, and that's when some of the brands that we all know now started. For example, Bizvim by Hiroki Nakamura started blending Navajo moccasins with Japanese techniques. He would get these traditionally indigo dyed bandanas and apply Native American patterns to them. The FBT sneaker moccasin may not be to my taste right now, but at the time was like iconic. And then of course a brand that we all know, Capital. Kiro Hirata took over from his dad in 2002 and really took it to this other level, kind of merging this like American hippie counterculture with Japanese folk art and turning traditional American workwear into like honestly masterpieces that just look incredible. They definitely didn't skimp on the obsession aspect either. The Capital Century denim is dyed 20 times to achieve the color. And a lot of their garments are blending these cultures. The Sukachan bomber jacket is mixing Hawaiian prints with Edo period motifs. And to me, I feel like the skeleton sweater is like halfway between a biker gang and samurai armor, maybe. It's also at this time that Needles are reworking vintage sportswear into kimono type of silhouettes. Oslo's fatigue pant comes out, which is a World War II military design. The engineered garments chore coat. So many of these things that we know and that we love, but I personally wasn't aware that they were really stemming from this American influence on Japan post-war. This American workwear was built just for function, for someone to work in a factory or build a house. And then Japan got this workwear that was not mindfully designed and gave it that soul and mindful design and turned it into something really special, which I really think is what's drawn me to make this video, because we're living in this world of fast news cycles and fast fashion and disposable clothes. And like, I personally just own so many garbage clothes that I've made impulse purchases for a quick dopamine hit. And I think us as a society, we're getting to this point where we're again looking for slow craftsmanship, or like something that doesn't come with this kind of stress of trying to keep up with a trend cycle. Just a couple of other quick points to make here that didn't really tie into the story, but I found when I was researching. I just thought that they would be interesting to throw out there. Blue Japan dye entire collections in indigo vats, which is, you know, a continuation of a centuries-old tradition in Japan. Freewheelers replicates 1930s railwork overalls, which I think is really cool. But one thing about this whole story that's really noteworthy is that Japan kind of taught America to see itself through new eyes. For example, Levi's now are partnering with Japanese mills for their maiden crafted line. And when they reissued the 1955 501 jean, they turned to these Japanese denim heads and experts for advice on how to do it properly. And you'll see if you look at the newest Ralph Lauren collections, it is heavily influenced by Japan. Apparently, they were looking at old van catalogs as a reference for when they were designing it. But if you're looking at it, you can just see that, you know, Capital was on the mood board for sure. So at the end of the day, it really was like the student had become the teacher. So for me, I don't know, it's a bit corny, but I just feel like it's just really interesting and really special that this kind of fashion style crossed an ocean and survived a war and then found this new life within the obsession of Japanese artisans. So I really appreciate it, and I hope you can too. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, then definitely like and subscribe. I would suggest you another video to watch here or here, but this is my first one, so there's no other videos to watch. But comment down below if you have anything that you'd like me to cover next. I'm definitely going to be making more videos, and thank you.